Hello, conscious leaders. Welcome back to another episode here at the Life Skill Masterclass Show. I'm your host, Elona Parry, helping companies scale and align their purpose and profits. And today I have the amazing honor of having somebody that's actually invested a lot in his background, and he does amazing work with communication, but not only. And he's joining us today to kind of give us some more insight around being more influential with our communication. I think when you have a company or even in personal life, I feel like communication is one of those channels. Is how we get to connect with others, is how we get to actually express our opinions, the things that we want to do, and also align other people towards our vision, mission, and purpose. So Dr. Danny Brassell is joining us today. Danny, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much ahead of time for the service and the impact that you're creating out there in the world with all the
Ah,
amazing things that you have done. So I just want to say hi, and let's jump right into some of the most meaningful moments in your background. I know it's
Sounds
very.
good. Thanks so much for having me, Alona. And more importantly, thanks for all that you do. You're spreading some joy around the world. We need a lot more of you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Likewise, I always say that good people with clear intention and really pure intention in the world are the ones that are going to come together and create impact. So, having said that, can you share a few of the most meaningful moments in your journey just to get to know you a little bit better?
Well, since your audience is mainly entrepreneurs, I kind of stumbled into being an entrepreneur. I've got the world's top reading engagement program, which in just over 2 months shows parents how to get their kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. Because of COVID, I started coaching people because since I lost 100 speaking engagements overnight, I had to make income in another way. And so I now help individuals, entrepreneurs, and organizations leverage speaking on stages as a major client lead source. And it's very fulfilling helping people increase their business. I guess probably my biggest home run was just a little bit over a year ago. I lead these small boutique-like workshops with my buddy Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson, who used to be on Broadway. So he's the wah wah, and I'm more the analytical person on how do we do things that are research based that'll get people more sales. Just over a year ago, we were working with a guy named Gustavo. Gustavo should be the president of the United States. He came to America from Ecuador, didn't speak a word of English. 30 years ago, he did every menial job known to man. He saved every penny in real estate, and 30 years later, he's a multi-millionaire. And so he came to us to craft a presentation, and his offer. He has a real estate coaching program that takes 4 months, and he offers it for $40,000. Well, that's a big offer, but I'm a big believer. There's two ways you get better at speaking. First of all, you got to watch lots of speakers. And second of all, one of my mentors was a guy named Jim Rohn. And Jim used to say, you can't pay other people to do your push-ups. And so I always tell people, you got to go out there and speak. Reps are valuable. And so I told Gustavo, I'm like, hey, you need to be speaking to Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, elementary schools, synagogues, churches, chambers of commerce. And he said, well, I'm going on a podcast tonight. I'm like, okay, here's your assignment. You have to call me tomorrow and tell me that you made the offer and tell me how it went. So he calls me the next day, and it was unbelievable. He's like, Danny, you're a genius. Jimmy, you're a genius. And so we're like, well, did you go on the podcast? He's like, yes. And I ask, well, did you make the offer? He's like, yes. I'm like, well, did you sell any? And he said 23.
Well,
Well, Alona, I got to tell you, my background is in reading, not math. But if I'm doing my math correctly, he made $920,000 that evening on a speech that we had crafted for him that afternoon. And since then, he and I are good buddies. We catch up every couple of months. On that one speech, he's made over 8 figures in just over a year. Now, I have to tell people your results may vary, but what I loved is he actually listened to what we said, and then he went out and he did the work, and that was amazing. So I guess that's a very long answer to your short question.
I love that, Danny. I love speaking myself. It's always the channel that I practice the most. And I love that you said that, yeah, you can't pay somebody else to do your push ups. And I also realized that just like any new skill, or new or old or mature, right, there's always things that we can do to improve it. But being intentional with it is definitely very important. So I love the work that you do with ensuring that people understand there's a structure behind it. And that's actually what I'm very interested in kind of diving into next, around like what makes speech influential. Like, how do we ensure that we are instilling the vision or the service that we have beyond our offers? Because to me, I've always seen the offers. I specialize in the service space, and I love the service space because of the service aspect of helping and contributing towards other people through our offers. So it's always beyond sales. But the fact that you can change 23 lives, I don't know, obviously the container, it could have been a
Yeah.
101 to one, or whatever the container of that offer. But the fact that all those lives were affected, I mean, that's like, this is definitely worth learning. And I'm sure that through your experience, you're going to be able to share a few things. Before I dive into that, you got me very curious around the education piece, because I'm also very passionate about education. I believe that education is the way to empower the world, because once we have more information and the education around all the topics that we're interested in, we can make better decisions, and we can become more conscious, and we can raise our awareness levels and all of those things, which are really necessary to be able to operate in today's world, which is kind of different from kind of what kind of maybe past generations, or kind of how we're heading and how things are improving very fast with the technology advancements.
Mhm.
Where did your passion for education stem from?
Well, it's ironic that I'm considered America's leading reading ambassador, Elona, because I grew up I hated reading. My father was a librarian. I always hated the library. The public library always had uncomfortable furniture. It smelt funny to me. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There's always some freaky homeless guy who thought he was a vampire hanging out by the bookshelves. I always hated the library. It wasn't until I started teaching in the inner city in South Central Los Angeles where I saw a lot of my students didn't have the resources that I had growing up. And I basically said, shame on me. I mean, I was very blessed, Alona. Both of my parents were in the home growing up. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we always had food on the table. And my parents always read in front of us kids, to us kids, and we had plenty of reading materials available. And so it really became my passion. It kills me. I've taught all age levels, and I always say, my kindergartners would go to bed with their backpacks on. They were so excited to go to school the next day. Meanwhile, my eighth graders were thinking of ways to get sick. I'm like, what happened in those 8 years to get that kid to hate school so much? If I'm doing my job, my students should be banging on my classroom door at 6 in the morning. They're so excited to be there. And they should be in tears at the end of the day when they hear that final bell. So it's a real passion for me. I think really, I don't like to play a naysayer game on education. I just don't like the way the education system's set up right now. It's set up for group success rather than individual success. I mean, I'm a big reader now, and I read biographies of successful people all the time. And one of the common elements is most of them dropped out of school. I'm like, what are we doing wrong in school? How can we individualize curricula for every student? And this is why I love your tribe of entrepreneurs. We're the misfits. We're the ones that we didn't fit in somehow, and we're crazy. We didn't go into the 9 to 5 job. Entrepreneurship. I can't remember who said it. It's living a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. And I just love being around entrepreneurs because these are the people that are trying to solve problems all the time. Anybody can gripe. I want to be around the solution solvers.
I love that you pinpointed that, because that's exactly been my experience. That a lot of the wisest lessons that I've had have been from my school of life, school of hard knocks, falling down, getting back up. And there's no such thing as just, finishing school, getting our degrees. Traditionally, sort of the paths have been kind of staged for us, because, we're always evolving as humans, and every day should be an opportunity to attend a class, much like this one, right? That's why even I came up with the name, a masterclass show, because I find that everybody's experience is like its own masterclass. You can learn so much from just listening to people's experiences, whether it's personal or professional. And much like you, I've always been a curious cat around, biographies, people's journeys, like how do people get to where they are? what are the challenges they overcome, human behavior in really in a nutshell. And I absolutely love, now reading. And I was always a B student. I failed math in middle school, so same thing, And for the longest, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm just not going to be, successful based on and achieve that American dream. As I moved here, I was only 15 and all of these things. But yeah, we got issues with it. But I'm glad that now there's new channels, new platforms to be able to learn and kind of find our communities. I think that's really a very important piece with education, because I think that's why we're evolving so fast, because the information's out, right? And now we can learn more about ourselves, self-discovery. We know,
Amen.
we're
Amen. Yeah, I
experiencing. Yeah,
completely agree with you, Elona. I think it's like the greatest opportunity in the history of humankind. So I'm right there with you.
absolutely. Danny, let's dive into maybe some of the challenges that you have seen when it comes to CEOs, founders, companies, when it comes to them understanding how to become more influential speakers. Let's maybe start with that, because obviously you got to speak something, you got to think something first before maybe then we can get into a speech in whatever container space. And, people need to utilize that. That's obviously everybody's personal experience. But what are some of the main challenges that you have seen when it comes to really increasing our influence as leaders and as company founders?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Alona. So the biggest misconception I see with the people I work with is many of them think that a good speech means that they get a standing ovation, which that's definitely a great sign of a great speech. Many of them think a sign of a great speech is people coming up to them after they give their speech saying, "Man, you are a fantastic speaker." That also is a wonderful sign. But I only evaluate an effective presentation in one way, and that is, will people take the next step with you, whether it's purchasing your product or enrolling in your coaching program or donating to your cause? Zig Ziglar used to say that he gave speeches to tens of thousands of people, but when he got evaluations back, out of every 100 evaluations he received back, only one of them talked about his speech changing their life, but his products, 99 out of 100 people were saying, "Oh, I listened to your tapes again and again. I read your books." That's how he really made an impact. I mean, you were talking about service earlier. Really, there's three types of people in your audience. There's three major motivations that people have. People might have all three. They might have one is stronger than the other. But those three motivations, and I kind of do it based on age, is 20-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 60-year-olds. So your 20-year-olds are interested in increasing their income. This is a generalization, but income is a major motivating factor. The ones that are in their 40s, their major motivator is freedom. Do they have time with their family? Do they get to do the things that they want? And then your 60-year-olds, their major motivation is their impact. What's your legacy? What are you doing to give back? So increasing income, freedom, and impact, if you can create a presentation that addresses those three motivations, you're pretty much going to be speaking to every single person in the room. And so when I'm working with entrepreneurs or CEO, I was working with a CEO the other day, and his presentation was just really drab and boring, and it didn't have any stories. And that's where Jimmy and I come in, is we help you shape your story. So here's the strategy for everybody in your audience right now is later on tonight, get in a comfortable chair with a pen and paper and a libation of choice. And for an hour, I want you to write down every story that's ever happened to you. And I don't mean the entire story. I just mean triggers, like the time I locked myself out of my car in front of Costco, the time Dad spilt mustard on his tie when we ate at that fancy restaurant. You'll find in just an hour, you'll probably have about 400 to 500 of these little triggers, these stories. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise is then you go through those triggers and you figure out, well, what's this really a story about? Oh, well, this is a story about personal responsibility. Oh, this is a story about loyalty. Oh, this is a story about love. And so on my computer, I literally have tens of thousands of stories on files. So if I ever am looking for a motivation in my audience, well, what's the point I want to make? Oh, I want my audience to take action. Well, here's a whole file of stories that I can give people to take action. So for example, I'll say, many years ago, I took my family to Hawaii, and my youngest daughter, she asked me if I'd get up early the next morning and watch the sunrise with her. And I said, oh yeah, that sounds great. But I didn't know this. The sun rises really early in Hawaii. And the next morning, my alarm clock was ringing, and all I wanted to do was hit the snooze button. But I had made a promise to Samantha. So I got up, we walked down to the beach, and we were treated to the most magnificent sunrise I've ever seen in my entire life. And for the next 2 hours, we sat there in the sand, and we told jokes, and we shared stories with one another. She's older now. We don't have those moments together anymore. And when I think back to that time with Samantha, I realize there's times in life when all of us want to hit the snooze button, but the people who are rewarded, the people who succeed in this life, are the people who get up and take action. So what I'm doing there when I'm working with a CEO is I'm like, if you want your audience to take action, to enroll in your program, you got to give them a story that makes them remember that, oh, this is what I have to do to take action. People remember, I mean, stories are everything. Of all people, it was Stalin who once said, a million dead is a statistic, one dead is a tragedy. He was right about that. Is if you really want your audience to take the journey with you, you have to personalize it by telling them stories. And so that's really what Jimmy and I do when we do our well-crafted story workshop presentations. A 2-day workshop with, we like groups of about 10 to 12 maximum, because that way we can give lots of individual feedback, plus people still have the ability to listen to other people's presentations and figure out where they can improve theirs.
I love that. You said so many beautiful things, and I love your measure of success around, public speaking in general, right? I mean, public speaking could be one-to-one, speaking to one person or to many, especially now in these virtual environments where we're also creating content. I love the measure of success being inspired action. Through your communication and through you speaking, was there inspired action that happened on the other end? Because that's where the impact really happens. I love that you highlighted that. And I love the audience demographic or segmentation or whatever we could call that those age groups, maybe obviously from your experience, you've seen that and probably research in the work that you do. But that's when I think back, that's actually most of the major motivation around kind of where you are in your phase of life. And it's predictable, right? Because obviously there's been so many humans through those stages before us. So I love that you shared that. And I love the exercise, because I've been trying to figure it out on my own. I'm like, how can I tap more into my stories, and sometimes when you're trying to do it in the moment, I don't know what happens, like you get a block, just like a writer's block. But I love that you said just triggers and then categorize them into themes. I thought that was very insightful and very intentional. And we all can come up, if I just sit right down now for like half hour, I can just keep going. That beautiful moment that you shared, I mean, that's kind of how life, we measure quality of life and happiness, fulfillment, because at the end of the day, that's really all that we want, connection, those moments with our loved ones, the small little moments that can be pieces of stories that we share from our heart. And then obviously the next step could be such a natural progression to the thing. I've always been a student around like organic things, natural things. I always hated agendas or pressure. I'm like, I never could do well in that. I crash. So I'm like, if I can just figure out my own way and rhythm and flow, how to do my own things, I think that's where authenticity comes in, which is so important in the era that we're actually living in and operating in and connecting with humans, whether it's our virtual environments or our live environments as well. So Danny, I wanted to ask you, can we dive a little bit deeper into sort of what makes a story intentional? Like, is there like a structure to it so that it could absolutely lead to inspired action, whether that action is, a next call, for the team, a next step for, sales conversation, or next steps to create impact, or getting our kids to do their homework. I mean, whatever it is, because obviously we're humans and we have all these life situations. It's not just our business that this can add value to. So is there like a certain format or structure that maybe you can pinpoint for people to kind of wrap around it?
There is, and bear with me because I'm a former teacher, so I like alliteration. I've been blessed with lots of wonderful coaches throughout my life. In middle school, My speech teacher, Lynn Eskridge, she said that a good presentation should always start with your introduction, then you go into your instruction, and then you present an invitation to the audience to work further with you, and then you end your presentation with something that is inspiring. So that's the 4 I's. I have been really blessed to work a lot with Pat Quinn and Pete Vargas. Pat and Pete talk about, first of all, you speak to the heart, and then you speak to the head, and then you show the audience how to further work with you by showing them the hand, and then of course you end with the heart again. The 4 C's. You connect with the audience, then you teach your content, then you have your call to action, and then you connect again with the audience. So pick your alliteration. There's all kinds of them, but that is really the structure and what's important. So the single most important part of your presentation is always the introduction. I mean, you have to connect immediately, or else why would people listen to you? And there's all kinds of ways to connect. I mean, you were talking about having difficulties in math and stuff. So this is one of the strategies Jimmy and I teach people, is what's called universalization, if I can actually pronounce it. So universalizing your story is, hey, for me, the biggest hurdle in my life was overcoming cancer. Maybe for you, it's passing a math test in high school. Maybe for you, it's losing 20 pounds. What you're doing then is you're taking to me, a good presentation starts out, this is my story, and today we're going to talk about your story, and let's work together and create our story together. That to me is really important. So your opening is obviously important. It's actually ironic. The least important part of your presentation is what you teach your audience. There's lots of research that shows this. That the bun is more important than the burger. People remember the beginning of your talk and the end of your talk. They don't remember anything in between. And so that's why the connection is so important with your audience. And then the end of your presentation, this is where I see most people make mistakes, is they only speak to one of two types of people. So I call it the Joe Fridays of the audience and the Julia Roberts of the audience. So Joe Friday is just the facts. So this is a person sitting in your audience. They're like, okay, what's he selling? How long does it take? How much does it cost? Does it work with people like me? That's a person that wants to know the details of the program. And you definitely have to address that in your presentation. But then you also have the Julia Roberts in the audience, who, this is the person, they just want to feel good. I don't know what it is that you're talking about, but does it make me feel good? I want to feel better in life. And so an effective presentation recognizes, and so again, an overgeneralization. I used ages before as an overgeneralization. I'll use gender this time. So guys tend to want to know all the details, the facts, and women in your audience tend to want to feel good. One of my favorite speakers, Brene Brown, she talks about authenticity. She's very good at connecting with her audience, and she knows her audience. Yes, I'm a guy and I connect with her, but really what she's focused on are women in her audience. And that's another strategy I'm always talking about with people is, you got to narrow your audience. If you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're pretty much offering nothing to nobody. Find your niche. Your podcast is a very good specific niche, is entrepreneurs. You can niche it down even more. It could be female entrepreneurs. It could be female entrepreneurs in New York. It could be female entrepreneurs in New York who drive BMWs. You can niche it down like that, and then you can gradually build up your audience. And that's what your podcast has done, is build up its audience to a larger group. But that's one of the bigger mistakes I see a lot of people trying to do, is they're just trying to generalize. And I'm like, I think it was Abraham Lincoln said, you can't please all the people all the time. You can please some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. So find your niche.
I love that. That's a great lesson in business overall, right? Wherever you are in the journey, understanding your audience, understanding who's on the other end is really crucial. And that's why I always loved the big, harmony, like harmonize, the details and then do the emotional connection, all of that. But the more you experience things and the more you actually get to talk to the people that you want to serve, the more, you get in touch with that. Otherwise, you just create in a vacuum. And that never, to me at least, it never felt like a good addition to my creative juices or processes, because, you got to get fed by the people around you, because we collaborate with energy as well. So it's really good to be able to connect with people that way as well. Well, Danny, I know we can keep going and going and going, because there's so much knowledge and wisdom that obviously you have gained through your experience and the work that you're doing out there in the world. I want to thank you ahead of time for everything that you shared with us, all the practical exercises, but also the thought leadership behind some of the things that you have experienced in your journey. I would like to end this conversation today with maybe a final message around your purpose. What do you really feel is the thing that you find is really the main purpose of the work you do, of your living legacy, waking up every day? Is there something clear that you have come up with through your experience that you really feel like, okay, this is my purpose, and you can define it like one sentence? Let's go there. And then also let's send, I know you have a beautiful resource for our audience, so can you mention what that resource is and how people can continue the conversation with you today?
Absolutely. I mean, again, because your audience, you can impact them a little bit with a short podcast, but your audience would benefit from working a lot more one-on-one with you, Lona. Same thing with me. As a thank you for everybody listening to my stories, I wanted to give everybody a couple of free resources. If you go to freegiftfromdanny.com, and then freegiftfromdanny.com, I'm going to give everybody a complimentary e-copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. This is actually a book I wrote for an elementary school principal who was trying to keep his faculty and staff positively engaged and motivated throughout the year. So I said, okay, I'll write you a book. So every week I give you a concept, an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book recommendation, demonstrates the same concept, and you read that in 5 minutes. Nothing pleases me more than CEOs starting off meetings with Dr. Seuss. And then you hit upon my passion in education. One of my entrepreneurial enterprises is I have the top reading engagement program online around the world, which in just over 2 months shows parents how to get their kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. Because I find schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I always ask people is, what good is it teaching kids how to read if they never want to read? I teach people why to read, because I've never had to tell a kid, go watch TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid, go read. I want them to choose to do it on their own. And so last summer I did a 5-day reading challenge online for about 700 parents, where every day for an hour, I gave them all kinds of the strategies I share in my reading habit program. And I'm going to give that to everybody as well. So if you just go to freegiftfromdanny.com, you'll get all of that. And Elona, I really appreciate all that you're doing. You're living your mission, which is you're having an impact. Legacy is important. I think that's really important. And I had mentioned to you before we went on air, I'm really appreciative to see. I love working with women and minorities. I think little kids need to see a lot more women and minorities up in positions of power so that they can aspire, to do great things. And so thanks for being the role model that you are, not just to your entrepreneurs, but to the kids of the world.
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, I love when when people discover their mission and purpose, and I know that's a big job a lot of times, and at certain phases and stages, it's so easy to kind of just skip that or kind of get confused. But it's all part of the process. It's never a linear process. But I believe that the more we learn and we read and we expose ourselves to amazing role models, as you mentioned, and communities of people that support us, the more we can discover, unravel things within ourselves, our intuition, and things that happen through just self-discovery. And of course, reading and surrounding ourselves with the right people absolutely ensures that you have those mirrors that you can tap into so that you could see parts of yourself. And then of course, the more you embrace those, the more you get to add value towards others. So it's always that kind of continuous process. Thank you so much for all the amazing work that you also do, Danny. And I would definitely encourage everyone, I'm going to go check out some of the resources, because I have a question. How do I get my teenagers to read? That's kind of my current situation. So we could probably chat beyond this podcast as well for some ideas around that and just getting involved, because I really feel like the earlier you can begin. I mean, now that I know what I know, I'm like, whoa, I wasted a lot of time, doing other things, which I could have been more intentional. But again, every journey is unique, and everything happens for a reason. But again, the more education awareness we have, the more we can be intentional with the things that we do, especially as parents, because we got those little audiences in our homes. I find that that's really the biggest legacy that we can also impact. So thank you so much for the work you do, Danny, and thank you so much for attending here today. And I want to thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe and share this with other amazing purpose-driven entrepreneurs and CEOs that are conscious leaders that are looking to change the world. And yeah, I want to thank you for another beautiful episode. And I'll see you next time with another amazing guest and conversation. Bye, everybody. Hello, dear podcast
Thank you so
listeners.
much,
Thank you
Elona.
so much for
Appreciate that.
supporting the show. And while we're here, I would love to introduce you to a couple of books that I've written and authored, best-selling books, in case that you're looking to add more legacy products into your life to help you scale your purpose and profits. The first book that I've written is called Connecting the Dots Backwards. And in this book, you'll have the clarity to clarify your vision and purpose so that you can do more good in the world. The second piece that is associated, that goes alongside the book, is the Connecting the Vision Backwards journal as well. So this is meant to implement a lot of the learnings from the book so that you can also self-reflect on some of that inner work that is necessary so that you clarify your purpose. The next book that I've written is called Purpose Driven Entrepreneurship. And this holds my framework, my methodology in scaling a company that aligns purpose with profit at the next level. So you'll find a connection of dots between your branding, your marketing, your sales, your systems, and your team so that you can grow a sustainable company that's simplified beyond its owner. The last book that I've written is called Visionary Purpose Driven Leadership. And this book is meant to help you scale up your leadership with your team so that you can build a healthy culture, create a conscious culture, but also, most importantly, build a legacy out of your company. And then the last piece of legacy product that I have created, of course, has stemmed from all my work with clients. And the most important skill that we need as leaders, which is time management, efficiency, and productivity. Focus on Purpose Planner is meant to help you plan your quarters and your year on purpose and on intention so that you're focused and working on the right priorities while freeing up your time and also aligning your purpose and your profit as well. Any of my products can be found right over here, left-hand side, on my website, elonaleparicoaching.com/books. And or you can scan the QSR code right here on the screen to get straight to the links and the books. Happy reading, and thank you again for watching the Life School Masterclass.